I'm going to get a clicker. It's going to be so much easier to advance my slides. I'm trying to get really advanced at lecturing and do it with my mind. I haven't quite accomplished it yet. All right, let's talk about trauma vent management. So a couple months ago, I'm upstairs in the ICU, and my phone rings. And it's the trauma attending, and he's like, I need you downstairs in the ED right now. This is never good. Okay, he's like, look, we have a big problem here. We have this patient. We have a critical trauma in the emergency department. We have a critical problem with our microphone. No, we have a critical trauma in the emergency department. High speed, MVC. They're bleeding everywhere, mostly into their pelvis. We gotta get them to IR. But we have a better microphone. Don't worry, to the rescue. Unfortunately, the patient not doing so well. The patient is satting 70% on an FiO2 of 100 and a PEEP of 10, and I need you to come down and fix the situation, please. So I meander down to the emergency department, and this is what I'm dealing with. 21-year-old guy, unknown past medical history, that chest x-ray, not very impressed, hypotensive, initial GCS 14. He was intubated for hypoxemia in the ED. Bunch of injuries. CT brains, little subarachnoid, mostly okay. C-spine's okay. Bilateral chest tubes were already placed for pneumothorax, and he's bleeding into his pelvis. Still hypotensive after 4 units, and most importantly, and the reason I am down there, is that he's already on 100%, PEEP of 10, and he's still satting 72%. And they're like, look, we're resuscitating, he's bleeding, we gotta go to IR. But understandably, IR's like, he's satting 72%, can we please do something about that? And I'm in the room and I'm like, I would rather be managing ARDS. And I feel like most of us would rather be managing ARDS. We are happy with that. We're comfy with that, not only because we see it more often, but there's a protocol for ARDS that we can just follow, and wouldn't that be nice? Not so much for trauma vents. So where do we start? We start with reading the vent in the critical trauma patient. Because you got to keep in mind, vents, they're not just diagnostic tools. They're therapeutic tools, but more importantly, I think about them as diagnostic tools. How we're going to use the vent to diagnose our patient? Well, the first thing is, you got to do this right away. Right after the patient's been intubated. That's the best time to do it because they're paralyzed. So you can see what's going on. It's like if you try to read an EKG when the patient is flailing around, usually not very effective. Same thing, useful when the patient's still paralyzed. Secondly, do it right away because it's like when you go downstairs and there's a patient in shock. What is the very first thing you do? Grab your ultrasound. Because you can't start treating their shock without knowing what's happening. And just like this, I can't start troubleshooting their hypoxemia until I have a differential diagnosis of why. So let's talk about reading the vent. So when you start reading the vent, the first thing you're going to do is compare what I want the vent to do, what I tell the vent to do with what the vent is actually doing, because in vents, like in real life, what you want to happen and what's actually happening may be two different things. And I'm going to compare the tidal volume I would like my patient to get with the tidal volume that they're actually getting. And is that tidal volume they're actually getting significantly lower? If it is, or even if it's not, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my peak pressure. Is it high? But the peak pressure, that number by itself, doesn't actually mean all that much without a plateau pressure. So I'm going to press my inspiratory hold button, and I'm going to get a plateau pressure. Now, what do these numbers mean? That would be a very useful thing to know, because often when I say peak pressure and plateau pressure, people are like, yeah, check them, but what do they mean again? Peak pressure. What is a peak pressure? The peak pressure is the highest pressure the vent detects anywhere in the system. The plateau pressure, that is the pressure that the alveoli are seeing. So the plateau pressure, that's the one that really matters because that's the one that your poor little alveoli are getting exposed to. Now, what does this waveform mean? Because when you press the inspiratory hold button, you get a plateau pressure, you get that waveform. That waveform shows you your peak pressure and your plateau pressure. And your plateau pressure, that's telling you about your lung compliance. How much pressure does it take to inflate the lungs? The difference between your peak and your plateau pressure, that is telling you about resistance. How much pressure is it taking to get the air to the lungs? Now, how is this actually going to help you in trauma? Like, that's all very nice. But let's say you go down, you look at your trauma vent, and in fact, the peak pressure is high. Okay? Peak pressure is high. I check a plateau pressure. My plateau pressure is also high. What is my differential diagnosis for that, specifically in a trauma patient? Well, one possibility is that I have a big, not decompressed pneumothorax. That is going to give me a high peak and a high plateau. This can happen even if you have a nice chest tube. Could be on the other side. Maybe it's not just big enough to handle this degree of positive pressure ventilation, or maybe it's clotted with blood. Check your chest tubes, make sure you don't need another one, make sure you don't need a bigger one. Alternatively, it could be abdominal compartment syndrome. And the ventilator is a way that I have previously caught abdominal compartment syndrome because all of a sudden, even though the patient's lungs look fine on the chest x-ray, my peak pressures, my plateau pressures go through the roof because the abdomen's blowing up. It's mashing up on the chest. The patient can't breathe. There's pressure on the lungs. That could be happening. If that's the case, can't fix it on a vent, need a surgeon. The third possibility is that they have bad pulmonary contusions. And this is like when you see this in ARDS. Your peak pressure is high, plateau pressure is high because their lung compliance is poor because their poor lungs are injured. What about this situation? All right, we have a high peak pressure, so we check a plateau pressure. And when we check a plateau pressure, we find even though the peak pressure is high, the plateau pressure is actually low or normal. This is a very different differential diagnosis. What is my differential diagnosis for this situation? Well, one possibility is just that the patient has baseline asthma or COPD. These patients come in, and usually if they're critical, we don't have time to get a history. So maybe they have horrible asthma, and now they aspirated gastric contents, they aspirated blood, we put them on a ventilator, their asthma is acting up. So it could be that. But the other big thing you got to think about in the trauma patient is, are there a bunch of clots? Is there a bunch of blood clots that are obstructing my ET tubes, my bronchi? Do I just need to clean them out? And this is a time to do a bronch. And sometimes you'll see the blood coming out of the ET tube, but sometimes you won't. Because if it's just a big clot and the bleeding is distal to the clot, you may not be seeing a bunch of bleeding out of the ET tube. So this is when I do a bronch. And what am I trying to accomplish with a bronch? Two things. One, I'm trying to remove some of those clots to help my oxygenation. But two, where is that bleeding coming from? Is it diffuse bleeding, bleeding everywhere? If so, I might need to do some nebulized TXA. Alternatively, if I look and I'm like, oh yeah, that right middle lobe, that is bleeding, that is useful information for your surgeons, for IR. So these are the two things you're trying to accomplish with a bronch. What about this situation? What about the situation when now your peak pressure alarm is going off, but it's going off because it's low? You have a low peak pressure and a very low plateau pressure. What is your differential for that? Well, one possibility is just your patient lung compliance is really good, but it's probably not because their chest x-ray looks terrible. The next thing you got to do is look at their tidal volumes, because what you are concerned about now is that they have a big air leak coming from the chest tube. And if they're not getting adequate tidal volumes, you need to do something about that, because what's going on is I'm trying to put maybe 500 cc's of air through the ET tube into the lungs. That air is promptly exiting the lungs directly from the chest tube instead of inflating the lungs. So if you have low peak pressures, low tidal volumes, you gotta find the leak. And often this means you need to put your vent on leak compensation. Now, if you're on a volume control mode, the way you do that is you press a bunch of buttons and find the button that says activate leak compensation. An easier way to do this is just put your patient on a mode of ventilation that is volume targeted, pressure controlled. Because when you do that, what's going to happen is your vent's going to be like, I'm going to target the tidal volume you set. And then I'm going to dynamically be like, okay, I gave them this much pressure. Nope, didn't get there with the tidal volume. So I know next time I got to give them a little bit more. And so put them on one of those modes. Now, unfortunately, every vent has its own brand name for these volume targeted pressure control modes. Some of them are PRVC, some of them are VC+. Just ask your RT, whatever that is, on the vent in front of you.
I'm sorry to butt in here and disrupt your video, but I hope you're enjoying the ResusX 2026 video that we're providing for you today. And if you want to see more, like the whole thing, the whole kit and caboodle, and earn CME or CU credits, then click on the link that we have in the description. You can get the entire conference plus CME and CEUs. It's yours right now, and we're offering a special discount for anyone here watching on YouTube. So with that, right back to the video.
So now we're like, okay, we read our vent, we have some differential diagnosis, let's move on to some specific strategies we can use. And the first one that's low-hanging fruit in hypoxemic patients is put them to sleep. If your patient is dysynchronous with the ventilator, one, it's harder to figure out what's happening, but two, I always used to underestimate the extent to which dysynchrony can precipitate hypoxemia. If you need to deeply sedate them, do it. If you need to paralyze them, that's probably okay, at least in the short term, especially because a lot of them, they're going to IR or OR anyways, at which point they'll get general anesthesia. What about some other things, though? One of the things that really pathophysiologically is important to understand about the difference between trauma patients and ARDS patients is that trauma patients often have more focal or heterogeneous lung injury. ARDS patients often very, very diffuse. Trauma patients, frequently, one side or certain parts of the lung are much worse than others. So what does that mean and how does that play out? Well, one of the things is positioning. Any patient who's hypoxemic, I go in the room, they're laying flat. One of the first things I do is sit them up. Now, of course, in a trauma patient, you may not be able to do that. You don't know if they have C-spine, T or L spine fractures. But what you can do is if you don't think you can sit them up, put them in reverse Trendelenburg. Another thing you can do is be like, okay, the left lung actually doesn't look so bad. The right lung looks pretty terrible. I'm going to put them with their good lung down. Why? Why is good lung down going to help you? Well, the idea here is to try to get your blood to where the oxygen is. And if we just look at this chest x-ray, it's not subtle. Probably the oxygen is mostly over there. So by putting them with the good side down, gravity will help us out and send the blood to where the oxygen is. So good side down. And in this particular patient, just doing that, reverse Trendelenburg, good side down, brought my SATs from like 72 to 82. That can help you a lot. Now, often the degree to which you can do this is limited in trauma patients because you have a bunch of fractures or you don't know if you have a bunch of fractures. So I will aggressively try and get my radiology reads early so I know, do I actually have C-spine, T or L spine fractures? Can I have some degrees of freedom with positioning? But let's say you can't. Or you could, but like with this patient, we were like, yes, we put him in good lung down, our SATs are better. And then IR was like, great, you gotta now lay him completely flat to go to IR. Okay, let's try again. What if you're in that situation? Well, another thing you can do, if either you can't fix positioning or it's not doing it for you, is try to help their VQ matching with an inhaled pulmonary vasodilator. So VQ matching, the idea here is you want to send the blood where you have good oxygenation and good ventilation, and there's a bunch of different things that can go wrong with that. And because trauma patients, their lung injury tends to be so heterogeneous, they often have pretty significant problems with VQ matching. And what you can do is start them on an inhaled pulmonary vasodilator. Now, why does this work? Well, when you inhale something, where is most of it going to go? To the good parts of the lungs that are moving air. What is it then going to do? Going to dilate the pulmonary capillaries in exactly those parts of the lungs, therefore making blood go to where the oxygen is. And you're going to use some ibuprostanol or inhaled nitric oxide. Next thing, PEEP optimization. So this is really, really tricky in these patients, and not just because you can't use the ARDSNet PEEP ladder. I mean, it wasn't really developed in those patients. We don't have a bunch of data in those patients. But also, you have other issues you need to deal with in those patients that can cause PEEP to cause you problems. What is our goal? What are we trying to accomplish with PEEP? Well, here's the idea. The idea is, of course, we have all these inflamed, closed alveoli, and what we want to do is give them PEEP and recruit up those alveoli. What we don't want to do is take alveoli that are already open and over-distend them. Because if you give those alveoli too much PEEP, then they are just going to get over-distended and you have helped yourself not at all. So in this chest x-ray, what we're trying to accomplish with PEEP is we want to recruit these alveoli without over-distending these alveoli. Because what's going to happen if you over-distend the good alveoli? The pressure is going to go up specifically in the good alveoli. When the pressure goes up specifically in the good alveoli, where is that going to send the blood? Directly to the bad alveoli, which is not what we want. So if you go up on the PEEP and your patient's oxygenation gets worse, it's possible this is what happened. But in a trauma patient, there's another possibility, which is you have a worsening pneumothorax. And this is the second reason PEEP is very complicated in these patients, because going up on the PEEP can 100% worsen your pneumothorax. Now, this doesn't mean that you should be afraid of PEEP in these patients and say, oh, we can't use it. But what it does mean is that you need to be much more thoughtful about your PEEP titration than you otherwise would be in an ARDS patient. So, the very first thing is that before you start up titrating your PEEP, you need to feel very secure in the fact that you have dealt with the pneumothorax. Get a repeat chest x-ray if you need to. Do an ultrasound. You have adequate chest tubes. They're on adequate suction. Now start messing with PEEP. As you're going up on the PEEP, you're trying to recruit those bad alveoli, but watch your chest tube. Watch for a worsening air leak. Watch your tidal volumes. Make sure that as you're going on the PEEP, you're not having an increased air leak and decreasing tidal volumes, and make sure that you're on some kind of leak compensation before you do this. To end, we are going to say that it is complicated in these patients to manage the ventilator. And the last complicated thing to understand is that you got to balance all these different things, balance them with their hemodynamics, their metabolic acidosis, and everything else that might be causing them problems. If you do it right, then your slides magically turn back on, which is a wonderful thing. Ta-da! Now, one of the questions people do ask me about these patients is, do we do lung protective tidal volumes? Do we do 6 cc's per kilo? This gets at the issue of we often have more than one problem and you can't have everything you want at the same time. So you need to balance your competing priorities. Now, one competing priority is simply that PEEP, positive pressure ventilation, has hemodynamic consequences that you need to deal with. And often, as you go up on the PEEP in patients who are hypovolemic, who may have some kind of hemoneurotonium or tamponade, you can totally tank their pressures. Now, in order to deal with that fact, you need to resuscitate them, because resuscitating them, giving them additional volume, will really, really help you. And as you do that, you're resuscitating, you're going up on your PEEP, you're feeling pretty good, except for the fact, too much volume, not so great for the lungs, because the lungs are like a sponge. When they're inflamed, they're going to suck up a bunch of fluid, and unlike a sponge, you can't just squeeze it out again. So be thoughtful about not over-resuscitating these patients, and certainly be thoughtful about, do they need any crystalloid? I'm going to really limit my crystalloid resuscitation while still giving them the blood product resuscitation that they need. Metabolic acidosis. So remember the relationship between metabolic acidosis and bleeding? It's bad, and I can't tell if my mic's cutting out because they're like, stop talking, you're done, or if it's a glitch, so I'm going to go towards stopping talking. As I said, metabolic acidosis, high-minute ventilation, that means sometimes not great tidal volumes. Injured brain, you sometimes need to be a little less aggressive about your oxygen, CO2, and pH targets and accept higher tidal volumes in order to do that. So, VV ECMO, it's a possibility. We're not going to talk about it now because I'm pretty sure I'm taking all the signals correctly that we're out of time. Fortunately, we are almost out of slides. Happily, my patient did better. We did all of those things. He left the ICU with a trach, lungs looking much better, and most importantly, neuro intact. Thank you guys so much for listening.